Hi, I'm Josh from FinalScanPro. In this video, we're going to look at the Chicago referencing style. Chicago style uses a footnote system. In this example, we've cited the sources by adding superscript numbers at the end of the sentence. Those numbers point to footnotes at the bottom of the page, where the full reference details are provided. One important thing to remember in Chicago style is that every citation gets its own number, even if you're citing the same source more than once. For example, here we've cited a paper by Emma Clark twice. Even though it's the same source, each citation has a different superscript number. So citation numbers 1 and 2 both point to the same work. In the footnotes, you give the full reference details the first time the source appears. This is called a full note. If you cite the same source again later, you don't need to repeat everything. A shortened version of the reference is enough. This is called a short note. One important thing to note is that reference numbers run consecutively throughout the entire document. You should never restart the numbering on a new page. For example, if you cite two sources on page 1 and label them 1 and 2, the very next citation on page 2 should be number 3, not number 1 again. Sometimes you may need to support a statement with multiple sources. In this case, don't add multiple citation numbers in the text. Instead, use one superscript number and combine all the sources into a single footnote. Within that footnote, separate each source using a semicolon. If you're using a direct word-for-word quote from a paper, you must place the text inside double quotation marks. You also need to include the page number in the footnote. You must include a bibliography or reference list at the end of your text. This list should contain all the sources, arranged alphabetically by the author's last name. I hope you found the video useful. Finally, before submitting your work, don't forget to run it through FinalScanPro. You'll receive a Turnitin style similarity report with all issues clearly highlighted and color-coded. You'll also get a revision report with suggestions to fix the issues quickly. Apply the recommended changes, recheck if needed, and you'll have a clean, original paper ready to submit.